I would say, that really define your killer experiment.
Don't get stuck on that killer experiment.
Get advice from different people, but also use your gut. You'll get a lot of contradictory advice.
Never just rely on one information. We all scientists, right? Put all the information together, do some cleaning of the data, and you can see the trend.
Fundraising, one top advice.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to part one of Building the Biotech of Tomorrow. My name is Fabio D'Agostino, and I created this series of interviews and panel discussions to inspire and empower as many scientists and founders from all around the world to create a successful biotech company. I'm here with 4 esteemed professionals in biotech and the VC space, and we're going to talk about 3 main topics: transition from scientist to founder, defining good science in biotech, key success factor for biotech companies, and as a bonus at the end, we're going to have a few suggestions on fundraising strategies for early stage biotech company. Let's have a look at the 4 panel members.
Fabio, thank you for the opportunity to be involved in the panel discussion today. Really very much appreciate the opportunity to do so. So I'm Panteli Theokarous. I'm the Chief Therapeutics Officer for Garuda Therapeutics, based in Cambridge, Massachusetts. I bring significant experience in the development of advanced therapies and complex therapies. Prior to Garuda, I was the global head of cell and gene therapy at PPD, part of Thermo Fisher Scientific, and before which I held clinical leadership roles at Janssen Oncology and a number of private biotech companies that I was involved in co-founding, growing, and scaling. I trained in stem cell and bone marrow transplantation in London before my experience in industry. And again, thank you for the opportunity to be part of the conversation today.
My name is Cheryl Zimberlin, PhD background, academic background, and most recently I was an investment director at M Ventures, the corporate fund of Merck A, where I focused on portfolio management, investment, and company creation around the globe, primarily Europe, US, and China. End of last year, I left M Ventures after 8 years, and since this year, I've been working together with Oncode Bridge Fund to support on portfolio, but also to help raise a new fund focused on early company creation in the Netherlands.
Daniela Begolo. My background is in molecular biology and academic research in drug target deconvolution of small molecules. So I guess I have something in common also with the rest of the audience and the people who are interested to move from academia. It is a big jump. I've been working in VC for the past 6 years, initially also with Cheryl at M Ventures, for a while at INKEF, an Amsterdam-based fund, and now I'm part of the team at EQT Life Science, working in investments, mostly in Series A, Series B companies, both in Europe and US. And I'm focused on biotech, of course.
My name is Liu Tang. You can see from my background, I run a small BD consulting firm. Here, I help a lot of Asia, particularly China-based biotech company, to partner with the ex-China companies, big pharma, biotech, VCs, especially those VC in the US and Europe. In the meantime, I also help a lot of actually US-based biotech and VC to look for innovative assets from China, help them to either expand their own company's pipeline or build new companies, as you could imagine. So I'm kind of helping both sides. And I have seen a lot of activity. Actually, this morning, BioNTech acquired a China-based company. I was just chatting with their co-founder, literally 30 seconds ago, congratulating him. He got a little bit richer. And also he told me a fascinating stories of how they, acquisition happened, started with some conversation about 2 or 3 years ago.
So with this, I'm going to start with the first question for the panel, which is:
Imagine you as experienced biotech professional or investor meet with a friend who is a scientist doing postdoc, and he or she tells you, have been working on this project for a few years, and I think we have some good data, and we are considering creating a biotech company to bring this new technology closer to patients. what would be your top advice to your
scientist friend, regardless of what they are developing? Can be a small molecule, it can be ADC, T engager, and cell and gene therapy, and so on and so forth. So who would like to go first?
I can take a sort of a stab at it, and then certainly, you know, other members of the panel can certainly weigh in. So Fabio, I would say that, you know, that transition, as you mentioned, from, you know, the academic into, you know, something that's a little bit more clinically or commercially sensitive in terms of that build out, I would say that really define your killer experiment. You know, what is your killer experiment to kind of showcase, you know, the value of your asset or your platform, and really be able to showcase that. As you engage with external stakeholders, you know, there's a myriad of different, you know, attributes that we can think about in terms of the complexity of the asset that you just mentioned. But I think really being able to kind of define that sort of specificity in that killer experiment and showcasing the value, particularly in that early stage, certainly from my experience, you know, has, you know, really led to something much more significant further on down.
Thank you, Pandey. Yeah, it's certainly very important. Also, sometimes, in my opinion, not to rush into setting up a company when it's too early to set up one. And if getting non-dilutive funding and grants can be difficult, setting up a company and raising investors' money is certainly even more challenging. So
maybe I can build on that, which would be don't get stuck on that killer experiment though. Once that is successful, we've seen a lot of companies then maybe test it in a specific model, in a specific indication, and then go out and pitch that because that's where they got the first data. But you should make sure that what you're pitching, the proposal you're pitching, is actually commercially viable. So maybe pressure tests with people externally, of course, not disclosing too much, but pressure testing the concept externally, because even if the killer experiment was in a specific indication that is more validated, that it's easier to reach, is easier to demonstrate, it doesn't mean that it will be what will then grab the attention of the investors. You really need to make sure that you're thinking about a problem that needs to be solving, an unmet need that needs to be met for patients, and a commercial opportunity that investors will be keen to jump on.
Yeah. And maybe building a little bit on what Daniela said, right? Get advice from different people, but also use your gut. Think about what people are saying, because you'll get a lot of contradictory advice as well as you go along. And it's a common mistake to listen to everyone, but then you're not really going into a straight line. So really prioritize what you need to do. Find their key value inflection points where you think that's the key things I need to do, and also speak to your TTO, bring them along in your process. It will make things a lot easier when you need to get a license, when you need to really get something from the academic institution or institution where you're affiliated with.
So I can add one more color, actually really fresh from something we did this morning. So before this webinar, we just did another one called Merge Acquisitions, the ultimate exit of biotech. I just came out of that webinar. And, you know, just recall what made the most impression over there. So we have a big pharma buyer. We have an investor like Fundraising Capital, crossover. Also have one person who just sold a company recently. So one thing very clear is, like, you know, when they start a company, they already have a little bit end game in their mind. So I think for, like, in the scientist start this, you know, the one tremendous difference between doing the experiment in the lab and doing a startup, or is really startup is kind of a very well planned, you know, exercise. The resources and the monies and everything is very limited. It's a little bit different from you know, doing research, right? You go nature, you should go to the places sometimes you know, least expected, right? So this is quite different, you know, especially when you hear from like big pharma, they are expecting, you know, the BD licensing deal and M&A could help their top line. Investor want to exit, right? The biotech startup, you know, someone just sold a company. They already have a very clear exit strategy. I think that's something probably, I know it's a bit early for scientists, but it's very helpful to have that kind of mentality before you get into this pretty challenging, but also super rewarding business. It's my 2 cents.
Thank you. And yes, of course, it's not, as Cyril was saying, it's not a straight line, and you need to have a plan. It can change. And one of the reason why I designed the community around the growth mindset is because you will face challenges. Everybody does. Everybody will face challenges setting up a company, but it's important to see all these obstacles as kind of opportunities to learn and improve and keep raising the bar. Because there will always be challenges. One thing that I would add to what has been said is also because there are probably people that are joining in that are very early in their process is that try and patent before you disclose anything, because then it might be just too late to actually patent and protect your innovation. So now
let's talk about growth mindset. It's a concept developed by Stanford psychologist Carol Dweck that's all about how we approach challenges. Basically, is the belief that abilities and intelligence can be developed with effort, learning, and perseverance. This is the opposite of a fixed mindset, where you believe skills and talents are set in stone. How does this relate to biotech, to a biotech company? Well, it's because in biotech, you will be dealing with challenges and uncertainties. Having a growth mindset means that all these challenges are seen as opportunity to learn, experimenting without fear of failure, and being open to feedback to improve your strategies. It's about saying, we haven't solved this yet. We will figure it out. That kind of mindset drives innovation, helps you adapt to challenges, and keeps your team motivated when going at stuff. This is one of the pillars of the global community for scientists and medical doctors that I'm creating. I'll leave you the link in the description below. What do we mean by good science in biotech?
Do we go from good science into good products, good medicinal products that can reach the patient? And as Daniela said, will fulfill an actual need that investors will be interested in.
I can kick it off. I mean, we also briefly chatted about it earlier, I think, and good science can have a lot of different meanings, especially coming from academia. In academia, it can be very exciting new data, something extremely disruptive, extremely new, that can also upend a little bit the perception people have on a field. And that is exciting science and good and probably very well done science, but it doesn't mean that translates into value that can be created in a company. Something that is published on a Nature paper also to be something that is commercially attractive also needs to be replicable science, also externally in a CRO, in an independent hands. It also needs to be translatable. And to be fair, sometimes something that is extremely disruptive is probably a bit too early and unproven for an investor to take a bet on. So I think what is important to remember is good science, at least from an investor perspective, is it needs to be replicable, it needs to be applicable, it needs to have a purpose from a commercial perspective. Otherwise, it's just an exciting piece of science that should be staying in academia from our perspective.
Yeah, I agree. Just to kind of add to Daniela's comments there, I think it's, really making sure that you're not taking your eyes off the key objective. And the key objective is making a difference for patients. And I think, there's an ability, I think, for us to understand and try and identify the endpoint and extrapolate back. And what does that mean in terms of implementing resource and talent, and really, again, translating that, that scientific endeavor. But I think it's also about understanding the ecosystem, the competition, how to differentiate, how to continue to raise the bar, not only for science, but also for patients. That would be a little bit of my perspective from just my personal experiences.
Yeah, I completely agree with the points that have been raised. I would really say, right, even though it's early, it might still only be a paper that you've published. You can still think about, how is this going to fit into the patient? How are you going to treat the patient? Where is it going to fit? Is there something similar being done? You can have the most beautiful mechanistic discovery, but if it is completely redundant, or it is in a pathway which won't be applicable in a patient setting, then maybe think about it again, or try think about it in how is it going to fit the current landscape.
I would probably add one thing. First is from the the lens of an investor or big pharma. When they look at your technology, oftentimes your nature paper would not just, let's say, typically identify a new target, could be a new target, but target is not something, let's say, at least the big pharma biotech willing to in-license, right? So you probably need to do something more. So one thing I see quite often, especially for top publication from lead institute, the paper and the patent plus some lead compound kind of go to the public at the same time. Actually, that becomes quite attractive for biotech or investor, right? So they have something they can act on, specific pattern, specific even lead molecule to act on, and also they can protect themselves, right? We always joking, if you have a shiny castle, you'd better make sure your moat is white and deep. Otherwise, it's not your castle. Someone else can take it. So that would be my 2 cents with this. What is good science? You probably need to do a little bit additional work. Sometimes time the whole thing together, you come out as a package, not just a single nature paper.
What are the key success factors for biotech companies?
What else is important other than just good science related, connected to a good opportunity, a good market?
Probably I can give a first try. Please correct me. So yeah. I actually have a lot of a discussion. Again, my background is a little bit help people build a company. So I was asking those VC, what's the features? I was asking what's the features of a successful company you would like to have? They give me 4 typically, oftentimes. Number 1 is the company to be a relevant field. We call them hot field, right? So you can name probably obesity, autoimmune diseases, or like ADC, for example. Number 2, you need to have a strong pipeline. Right now, nowadays, technology is not enough. You need to have some, this is people use like the goose and the golden egg, kind of a metaphor. You need to have a egg, pretty shiny one. That's number 2. Number 3, you'd better have a pretty, kind of a substantial or like a potential strong capital support. So when you need to reach some inflection point, you should not run out of money. Last, probably most important, is that you should have a very strong management team. Not necessarily all superstar because it costs a lot of money and very few of them really qualify that. But at least your team give people this confidence. You can carry the whole business until the next inflection point. Right? That's what, in the end, VC are really investing in the team. They deal with the people. So great team, not necessarily all star, but a great functional team can be probably the most important out of the 4 major features, if I may. So that's as a starter. Feel free correct me and add some new information.
I would agree. I think those are all important tenets. One additional one that I would add is creating and instilling the right culture in an organization, and I think the culture needs to be driven by leadership. How to distill that through the organization, how to have a vision and a mission, and ensuring that we are taking our colleagues with us on that journey, so to speak. So I think instilling the right culture, and we know there's an upside in terms of productivity, in terms of motivation and drive, and ensuring that again we've got the right resourcing model in place with the right talent who are really going to be committed to the mission and help to really translate the science into something very meaningful for patients. Again, that would just to add a little bit more context to Leon's commentary there.
Yeah, and maybe adding to that, right? I think you can see here, right? Biotech is a global industry. The community is quite small. You get quite a lot of overlap. A lot of people know each other, so everybody speaks to each other. So it's good to understand what is going on. Reinventing the wheel is not always necessary. So be open in your discussions, listen to what people are doing, and also in how to build your company, right? Maybe merging and working together with others is also another possibility or route you could go to. Not everybody needs to create their own biotech from the get-go, but carefully listen to what is being said and the questions being asked. For example, by speaking to several people, if everybody's asking the same questions, that can also help you prioritize which experiments and where you need to get some answers and think about them and address the problems. And lastly, I would say investors save everything. So every time you go back or you speak to somebody, they will be able to look at the last presentations. They will be able to compare it to your next one. And often, right, it's mostly about how do you get to where you are. Your first presentation is not going to be your final business plan that you get invested into. So they will look at your science. Has it progressed? Has the team changed? Are there questions surrounding that? And most important, are you meeting the timelines you had put together, or is there a good reason why you're not meeting those timelines? So that would be my key things that I would say here.
I think there is very little to add. The rest of the panel has said a lot of what I think everybody is thinking about in that sense. Maybe just a comment more of expanding on when you think about the team and in general how you build the team and a company is really consider the variety of expertises you need around the table. So of course, the audience I think we're targeting today is also a lot of academic founders or thinking people in academia who are thinking about starting a company. There is a lot of other things that when coming from academia, you don't know how necessarily work in biotech, and that's okay. You just need to pair yourself with people who might know better and complement the science with more operational or with more structure that you can find outside. And that's important to keep in mind. So it's good to partner up with people who have a different perspective, and it's actually quite necessary. And that thinking about also that also make me think about what the future could look like in general for biotech, and of course the increase of the amount of data present and the way data is used towards the future is just something we cannot ignore anymore nowadays. And not every company will need to have a fancy, flashy AI. That's not absolutely what I'm saying. But if you are a company that relies on large amounts of data, you might want to start thinking about that very early on and integrating those expertise in the company early on, because how you collect that data will have an impact on whether that can be used from modeling in the future. And so you should start early on thinking about it and integrating that thinking before you spend the money on the experiments that might not be set up for success. So just a couple of thoughts.
Thank you, Daniela.
Fundraising. Top advice to early stage founders when it comes to fundraising.
I would quickly say build your network as quickly as possible. It's a very, very complex ecosystem, so build your network quickly with credibility and with commitment.
Thank you, Panteli.
I would say don't be afraid to ask. You're going to get a lot of no's, and ask why. Why are we receiving a no? Ask for feedback. Be open to the feedback.
Thank you. Daniela.
Yeah, I think agree, open to the feedback. Not all investors have the truth in their pockets. Also, sometimes ignore some of their suggestions. Just try to average out whatever feedback you get and try to get on that track.
Thank you. Leon.
I would say start with the friends and family. If you have a friends or family who's in VC field, that's the best. Right? Ask them, give you honest feedback, because sometimes some VC are very diplomatic. They could even have a competing opportunities, right? So you just never just rely on one information. We all scientists, right? Put all the information together, do some cleaning of the data, and you can see the trend. That's something we are very good at. So, make the best use of it.
Thank you, everyone.
And that's it. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button so that you won't miss our next episode in December. If you would like to learn more about our global community, check the link in the description. You can also follow me and connect with me on LinkedIn. I'll see you in December. Until then, bye-bye.